As women rise in protest against the Taliban, the new hardline regime has issued a fresh diktat that requires all agitations, slogans and banners to be pre-approved by the Taliban government. Oppression is fast becoming the rule of law in Afghanistan. Two journalists who were covering the women protests in Kabul were thrashed by the Talibanis. This is the world's worst nightmare. The Taliban, which claim to have moderated, showing their true ugly face, where freedom and rights have absolutely no place.
Bizarre Diktat 1. Prior permission needed for protest. Bizarre Diktat 2. Slogans and banners to be approved first. Bizarre Diktat 3. Purpose, place, time for protest to be shared with Taliban first. Bizarre Diktat 4. Police to be informed for protest a day before. Welcome to Taliban's brutal world of suppression, where any form of dissent is ruthlessly crushed. A country run by world's most wanted terrorists, where oppressive diktats by terrorists are the rule of law. Taliban are scared of any form of resistance. Recent protests against Pakistan and its stooges, mostly led by women and the young, have been crushed with volleys of gunfire by all male and mullah Taliban. Despite trying hard to project a more accommodating face to the world, the Taliban are getting exposed by their draconian actions. These images are the proof that for journalists, Afghanistan is the most dangerous country in the world. These two Afghan journalists who covered the all-women protests in Kabul on Tuesday were first abducted, then brutally thrashed.
نزدیک به 10 دقیقه می رقم 7-8 نفر به جان ما تا که زور داشتن میزدن. این با آخرین زور خود چوبر بالا میکرد میزد به جان. بعد از اینکه بسیار ما را زدن دیدم که از حال رفتیم و این ما کاملا بی‌حال شد. ما را از اونجا بالا کردن بردن که زندانی کنن یا که سلولات به اونجا یک چند نفر دیگه برد.
هر چی داد و بیداد میکردم که من نکردم با من خشونت نکنید. من خبرنگار هستم، اهمیت نمیدادن. اتفاقا مسخره میکردن که خبرنگار هستی، فیلم پخش میکنی، تظاهرات گسترش میتین. من فقط داد و بیداد میکردم. تمام طالبایی که آمده بودن برای زدن من همه همسن و سال من بودن، از من پایین‌تر، حتی 18 ساله 17 ساله، بسیار جوان بودن، آمده بودن که مرا بزنن.
The usual gunfire to our side, and they took our camera and mic and trended by the did. They are against freedom of speech in media. When the spokesman of Taliban, Zabiullah Mujahid, talks, he always say they are pro-freedom of, but in action, the situation is totally different.
Speaking to India Today, resistance insider and spokesperson Ali Maizam Nazari says the world can't expect any humanity from barbaric Taliban.
Cooperation with the Taliban is meaningless. No one can ever cooperate with a criminal group, with a drug cartel, with a terrorist organization. Expecting that itself is completely is a miscalculation.
Will the world continue to play mute spectator as Taliban, aided by Pakistan, brutalized an entire nation? With Geeta Mohan in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
Taliban spokesperson Syed Zakarullah Hashimi has said that a woman can't be a minister and that instead women should sit at home and give birth. The Taliban spokesperson also reacted to protests across Afghanistan, saying that women protesters do not represent all women in the country.
ضرور نیست که در کابینه زن باشه. ما اینقدر برات میگم. یعنی ضرور است که زن داشته باشیم ما در کابینه.
چرا ضرور نیست آقای؟
چی ضرورت داره؟ تو ضرورتش بر من بکن.
خب زن نصف پیکر جامعه نیست مگه؟
ولی ما خود نصفش ندانستیم اونا را. کلگی نصف میدانه. خود نصف چه رقم نیست؟ همین نصف که ما تعریف میکنیم همین نصف خودش غلط تعریف میشه اینجا. نصفی است که تو رو در کابینه ماندی نمیس نصف است. اگر هر چقدر حقوقش پایمال میکردی و حقش در جای شده، من مثال بر تو میگم. در طی 20 سال اخیر هر چقدر که از این میدیا، از این چیزی که در دست امریکا و در دست از این حکومت غلام بوده، هر چقدر که نشر شده بغیر از فحشا در دفترها دیگه چیز نشر شده، ما خو نکردیم. ما رو خو نمیماندن، نه هیچ کس هم نمیماندن.
نمیشه تمام زنا رو متهم کرد.
نه، من یک چیز برات میگم. یک چیز من برات میگم. من نمیگم که تمام زنا، من میگم که زنای افغانستان هم همین تمام زنا در افغانستان همین حقوقه که 4 زن میاد دویجا مثال گپ چه میکنه مظاهره میکنه، همین تظاهر از همه زنای افغانستان نمیکنه. زنای افغانستان اونمو زنا است که ملت شهید پرور پیدا میکنه، اینا را تربیت میکنه، با اخلاق اسلامی تربیت میکنه، اینا را در مقابل 3 تا ستمکش جهان در طی 100 سال اخیر کشف کرده.
بدی کار چی است که یک زن مثلا وزیر باشه آقا؟
چرا باشه؟ ما همین سوال تو بود، من دوال بود.
چرا نباشه؟
خود چرا نباشه؟ ما برات میگم که چرا نباشه. کاری که زن میکنه و زن نمیتونه اون کارو بکنه. یک چیزی در گردنش میندازی که او قابل از اون نیست که او را پیش ببره. چی کدام فایده؟
Taliban 2.0 had promised they'd be different, that this was a more moderate, progressive face of the Taliban. Have the first few days of the new Taliban regime shown that this was a complete farce, a total lie? And are the worst nightmares about the new old Taliban regime beginning now to come true? Joining me on this broadcast is Khadija Amin, a well-known Afghan journalist, at this moment joining us from Spain. She was an anchor with RTV. When Taliban suspended all female employees of the network, she fled Kabul at that time, and her job is now being done by male-only anchors. So welcome, ma'am. We have with us Vivek Kajju. He's been our former ambassador to Afghanistan, former secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs. We have with us also High Commissioner Abdul Basit. He's been Pakistan's High Commissioner to India. We have with us Professor Jabin Jacob, Associate Professor at the Department of International Relations at the Shiv Nada University. I want to go across to Khadija Amin first, because journalists being beaten up, those pictures of Afghan journalists who were thrashed black and blue, viral across the world. Are you now convinced that the worst nightmares about the Taliban regime are coming true, and all the comments that were made about journalists being allowed to do their job or them having nothing to fear were all just a lie to ensure that they were able to get the international community off their back while they were entrenching themselves across Afghanistan?
Thanks for having me in this show. Yeah, right now the situation for all people that who are in Afghanistan are getting very bad, because today I hear the news that the Taliban say that women are not allowed to work anymore, because it means like this, that they doesn't have respect to the women rights. So it's unacceptable for all of us that they don't want to give rights for the women and for all the people and the journalists that yesterday they were beaten by the Taliban. So it seems that the Taliban are not changed, and they also the Taliban are that they were 20 years ago. They don't want to give the people their rights and their cabinet, just the Taliban that who are still in the blacklist of the terrorism. So it means that they want just the Taliban want to give the control of Afghanistan, and everything that they want they can do on the people of Afghanistan. That no, it's not acceptable for any person right now.
Vivek Kajju, this attack on journalists, do you think this is intended to send a signal to ensure that, you know, all other journalists who are still active in Afghanistan realize that they really need to zip up, fall in line, or else the consequences could be very, very injurious to their health?
I think this represents a very regressive system and ideology, and they are manifesting what they believe. In practice, what they have always professed, the Taliban. I also think that at this time, it is Pakistan's special responsibility to, quote-unquote, educate the Taliban. Perhaps it would have been better not to send the DG-ISI to Kabul at this stage, but to send a group of lady journalists and lady officials from Pakistan, perhaps to send the Foreign Secretary, and perhaps even High Commissioner Bassett should have been sent to educate them on what the world expects from them.
Would you at least say, High Commissioner Bassett, that you're disappointed with the first few days of the Taliban regime, given the fact that now they've got a whole slew of restrictions on protests, having to take pre-approval of who wants to protest, why they want to protest from the Taliban regime? I mean, you can't really have that in any country, especially given the fact that the protest is against the government of the day. Are you willing to say that the actions of the Taliban regime have been deeply disappointing?
Rahul, thank you very much. It goes without saying that no country can progress, develop without active participation of women. I mean, there are no two views on that. As for your second question about permission, to seek permission for protests, this practice is also very much there in the Western countries. You can't just go out and start demonstrating. You need to seek permission first, venue, timing, and also the purpose of demonstration. So this is not something, again, unique to the present Taliban government in Afghanistan. So, but my contention would be that, these are still initial days. And the Taliban, they would obviously understand as to what the international community expects from them. So give them some time, let them, form their government, proper government, and then we would see. And
they're choking free speech. They're choking women.
Not really.
They're forcing them to stay at home, say, give birth, do nothing else, and you want them to be given more time?
As I said, no country can develop without women's participation. That can't.
Khadija Amin, do you agree with the High Commissioner? He says, give them more time, things will settle down, or do you think things will get worse?
No, we can give them time, because it's getting to about it's more than 2 weeks that they are in Kabul. So day by day they are taking very bad decisions about the women. So what does it mean that he says that no women can be ministers? So what they mean by that? So it's unacceptable for us if right now the women be silent. So they will after this they will say that no, right now the woman doesn't have right. So it's unacceptable for the women that they be silent, and after this I asked the Taliban spokesman that says that the Taliban just can birth a child and just to educate that child. So what does it mean by this? The women have rights
the concern,
to work, to
Abdul
study, and
is that things could get worse. Far from getting better, the likes of Khadija Amin and the others would worry that things could get worse, that the chokehold of the Taliban on liberty, on freedom, on just the way women lead their lives could get much worse as the days wear on.
As far as Pakistan is concerned, we would like, very much like, and we are working in that direction, that the life for ordinary people of Afghanistan should now get better. They should now, have the opportunity like other people around the world. So as far as, nobody can, as I said earlier, nobody can condone the Talibanization of the 90s. Hence, we are trying to encourage the Taliban to be more moderate in their interpretation of Islam and, present the real picture, the real image of Islam. I'm sure the woman sitting here, the lady sitting here on your show, she also would very much like to practice her life in accordance with the teachings of Islam as a Muslim woman. Nobody, in Afghanistan, you would not find people against Islam. But the problem is, obviously, that the Taliban have their extremist interpretation. Now, the question is, what other option you have in Afghanistan? You have to deal with the Taliban and encourage them to be moderate rather than pushing the entire country into an interminable arms civil war once again.
High Commissioner Basit saying that the Pakistan involvement has been to try and moderate the Taliban. Do you buy that at all, or do you think completely contrary, given the fact that they've made the Haqqani network in charge of crucial portfolios in the new Afghan dispensation? It is Pakistan which behind the scenes is actually encouraging, prodding the Taliban to go out and do what they want, which includes choking the rights of brave folks like Khadija Amin.
Well, Rahul, that might well be so, but I sort of go beyond Pakistan and point to China. Pakistan by itself cannot do what it's doing in terms of supporting the Taliban if it were not for the fact that the international community was standing by and watching all of this happen. And that Pakistan's back is sort of stiffened, spine is stiffened by the support that China gives. And let me point out here, what you see in terms of the beatings of journalists, perhaps the big difference between China and the Taliban in this particular case is the beatings of journalists in China is not a sort of public viewing. But otherwise, this is off a piece with the situation in China in terms of treatment of journalists. And it's not the case that while Mao said, women hold up half the sky, the fact of the matter is that in practice, women really do not have much of a career prospects in terms of political career prospects in China either. So, this sort of works very well as far as the Chinese are concerned.
In fact, the growing alliance between China, Pakistan and the Taliban has become a cause of concern for the world, especially for India. China has endorsed the Taliban interim government and announced $31 million in aid for Kabul, while Pakistan continues to strengthen its stronghold in Afghanistan, saying that it will work closely with China to rebuild the war-torn country.
Women protesters brutally thrashed for demanding rights. Journalists mercilessly attacked for doing their job. Women prohibited from playing sports. It's not even been 100 hours since the Taliban announced an interim government, but the actions show it's not changed its stripes.
My national security team and I have been closely monitoring the
While the US and EU have asked the Taliban to earn legitimacy by ensuring human rights, China and Pakistan have no qualms in recognizing the brutal regime. Turning a blind eye to shocking images emerging out of Kabul, China has in fact hailed the Taliban for ending anarchy. And in a show of full support, China pledged $31 million in immediate aid to Afghanistan.
China attaches importance to the Taliban's announcement of the establishment of an interim government and some important personnel arrangements which has put an end to a 3-week anarchy state in Afghanistan and is an essential step for Afghanistan's restoration of domestic order and post-war reconstruction. We have also noted the Taliban statement that the formation of the interim government is to restore social and economic order as soon as possible.
And Pakistan is not far behind. Irony died 1,000 deaths when a bankrupt Imran government announced that it will reconstruct Afghanistan along with China.
As a neighbor of Afghanistan, of course, the interests of both China and Pakistan converge. We have similar views about the future of Afghanistan, peace and stability in Afghanistan, the economic future of Afghanistan and its people, the rebuilding and reconstruction of Afghanistan.
ISI chief Faiz Hamid camped in Kabul as the Taliban decided on its government, and the final list of ministers proved Pakistan's big influence in Kabul. Mullah Akhund, a surprise choice for the Prime Minister, was the ISI's pick. The Pakistan spy agency also ensured that key ministries came under Haqqani control.
Well, as Zabiullah Mujahid mentioned in his speech, our new government will have positive relations with China, Russia and other countries. Our behavior will be good with all regional nations and the international society. We don't have problems with any country or region in the world.
India's fears are not unfounded. A Pakistan-Taliban-China nexus adds a new threat dimension to the region. A threat that originates from the Taliban's strong base in Kandahar, is fueled in Islamabad and goes all the way to Beijing. Bureau Report, India Today.
What's very clear is that China is coming out openly wanting to support the new Taliban regime, take care only of their own interests, regardless of world opinion, in concert with Pakistan. Professor Jabin Jacob, how should India deal with this dangerous confluence of Pakistan and China together wanting or claiming that they want to rebuild Afghanistan and clearly wanting to edge India out of the equation even further?
Well, I would say that, first of all, we have to take things in perspective. This $31 million that the Chinese announced is actually peanuts. I think the Chinese are equally concerned about the way the Taliban are being perceived in the rest of the world. And I think they are also concerned about the image or the hit to their reputation as far as their support for the Taliban goes. The problem with China is, or the problem as far as the Chinese see, is twofold. One is, of course, what I described in terms of reputational blowback. But second, they also want the Americans out of this area. They also want to ensure a system in which the Chinese political model of economic development minus political freedoms gets free rein in this part of the world. So any liberal democracy, any elected government is a threat to the Chinese political system. As long as that is the case, the Chinese will deal with the Taliban because, they also have no other options. But as far as the Taliban is concerned, remember, the issue of Islamic fundamentalism and the problem that the Chinese have in Xinjiang itself, they live in a glass house and they will hesitate to throw stones at the Taliban for fear of the impact it might have on China's own rested minorities or the sort of sanctuary that Afghans or the Pakistanis
how should India be dealing with this dangerous tango? China and Pakistan together wanting or claiming to rebuild Afghanistan. How should India be dealing with this situation?
I think India has to engage the Taliban. That does not mean endorsing their regressive ideology. And that certainly doesn't mean that Pakistan and China should be allowed a free hand, because we have grave reservations about the Taliban and what they stand for. The Taliban need to know that their only options for looking out to the world is not China and Pakistan alone. At the end of the day, it's also been my experience that the Pashtun, and the Taliban are Pashtun, the core is Pashtun, are independent people. They seek to create spaces even when they are dependent, like they are today, on Pakistan. And deep down, my own experience in Kabul showed me that among the Pashtuns at large, there were very, very deep resentment against Pakistan. And finally, Rahul, the Pakistanis are doing themselves no favor by flaunting their connections with the Taliban by sending the DG-ISI. I can assure you that that clip would be played 1,000,000 times, and what would be said, and pardon my being crude here, you will forgive me. In the Pashtuns, any person living across the Indus is viewed as a Punjabi. And in Afghanistan, what the word would be that why have these Punjabis come here? And the Pakistanis will find it difficult to live that down. So I, for one, as an Indian, am extremely happy that they are at the moment going all out to show their connections with Afghanistan in a most crude manner.
Let High Commissioner Abdul Basit respond to that. Are you concerned that this move could boomerang on Islamabad? The fact that this new Taliban regime would be seen by the Pashtuns as a puppet of Islamabad, and that is something which no Pashtun would ever like, High Commissioner Basit.
First of all, the Taliban are not a puppet of Islamabad. They are very independent-minded people, as Ambassador Kaju has said. So we may have some influence over them, that is correct. And that's why we are trying to use that influence in a positive manner in order to ensure that they do not adopt extremist policies. They do not revert to the Talibanization of the 90s. This is our major concern as well. So I do not really agree with Ambassador Kaju that Pakistan, we do have concerns, obviously, in the context of the TTP and other terrorist organizations. And since the Taliban have assured the world, including the US, through that 29 February agreement, that they would not allow their territory to be used for terrorism anywhere in the world. So we, for now at least, take their words. And we would work with them in order to ensure that they abide by their commitment to the international community. Our purpose is not to push Afghanistan into another civil war. We would very much like to see that not happening, because Pakistan will be directly affected by that. So that is our biggest concern. Hence, at the moment, we are providing humanitarian assistance along with China. So these are, I think the international community sooner or later will also have to realize that they cannot, it serves no purpose to isolate Afghanistan. It serves no purpose whatsoever. At the end of the day, the world will have to deal with the Taliban, because there is no other organization or force which can control the entire swathe of Afghanistan. Okay. It is as simple as that.
On the back of the Afghan crisis, Prime Minister Modi today chaired the 13th BRICS summit, which was held virtually, while India raised the issue of terror, saying that 5 nations had adopted the counter-terrorism action plan. Russia blamed the United States for the current situation in Afghanistan. Vladimir Putin added that the country should not become a threat to its neighbors and become a source of terror and drug trafficking, while both China and Russia took a jibe at the US and the Western form of democracy, saying it had completely failed in Afghanistan. The BRIC leaders later adopted the New Delhi Declaration, which underscored the priority of fighting terrorism, preventing attempts by terrorist organizations to use Afghan territory as terror sanctuary and to carry out attacks against other countries.
हमने ब्रिक्स काउंटर टेररिज्म एक्शन प्लान भी एडॉप्ट किया है। हमारी अंतरिक्ष एजेंसियों के बीच रिमोट सेंसिंग सैटेलाइट कॉन्स्टेलेशन समझौते से सहयोग का एक नया अध्याय शुरू हो रहा है। हमारे कस्टम्स विभागों के बीच सहयोग से इंट्रा ब्रिक्स व्यापार आसान होगा। एक वर्चुअल नेटवर्क के रूप में ब्रिक्स वैक्सीनेशन अनुसंधान और विकास केंद्र शुरू करने पर भी सहमति बनी है।
The global security has faced serious challenges and the system of strategic stability has gone all downhill. outstanding regional conflicts haven't stopped. On the contrary, they have erupted again, becoming more violent. US and its allies' withdrawal from Afghanistan has led to a new crisis, and it's still unclear how this will affect regional and global security. The citizens of this country have fought for decades and deserve to exercise the right of defining what their state will look like on their own. Meanwhile, we are all interested in Afghanistan's ceasing to be a threat to the neighbors, so that the Afghan territory would be a source of drug trafficking and terrorism. We are interested in stopping migration flows.
Dr. Vasily Kashin joins us, Senior Research Fellow at the Center for Comprehensive European and International Studies at the National Research University from Moscow. Dr. Kashin, welcome. It's good to have you back again. I thought I'll spend some time understanding from you how the government of Vladimir Putin and the Russian state is looking at what's happening inside Afghanistan. We're seeing statements from Pakistan, from China about wanting to work with the new Taliban regime. From Vladimir Putin, we saw a strong comment on how Afghan territory should not be used by the Taliban as a sanctuary for other terrorists. What's the general view about how this Taliban government has shaped up so far, sir?
Well, the dominating view is that we have to explore all possibilities for diplomacy with Taliban, trying to negotiate with them some model of coexistence, try to get their commitment not to allow any terrorist activity originating from their territory, and maybe also achieving some sort of cooperation on drug trafficking. At the same time, there is an understanding that the situation in Afghanistan remains unpredictable. We cannot be sure even of the stability of the new Taliban regime, and we cannot be sure that the regime will fulfill its obligations, although the current signals towards Russia are generally positive. So we need to simultaneously conduct diplomatic engagement with Taliban, and at the same time we are strengthening our defense. We are strengthening cooperation with Central Asian countries and with other regional partners in the fields of military and security. And all of this is being done simultaneously. We will need to explore any possibility for compromise and peaceful resolution, but we also need to be absolutely ready. Of course, if Taliban fulfills its promises and if the security interests are ensured, we could be open for more cooperation with them, including economic cooperation and assistance.
Dr. Vasily Kashin, thank you for joining us from Moscow. The Taliban has appointed Haji Mohammad Idris as the governor of the Afghanistan Bank, the central bank of the country. The man on your screen right now, working on the laptop with a gun on his desk, is none other than Haji Mohammad Idris. Idris was the Taliban's finance section head, but he has no formal financial training or higher education, according to data that's available in the public domain. That's not all. The Taliban has chosen to give the charge of 5 key economic portfolios to men who have little exposure to modern education or a background, very basic background in economics, accounting or finance.
The Afghan economy is in ruin. With sanctions by major international donors and a freeze on the central bank's $9 billion assets by the US. The Taliban has had an easy run in grabbing power in Afghanistan. But can the proscribed terror organization fix the nation's broken economy? The answers may lie with 5 key people appointed to handle the economy. Here's who they are. Afghanistan's new Minister of Economic Affairs is 66-year-old Khuriddin Mohammad Hanif. Hanif is an ethnic Tajik and a member of the terror group's Supreme Council. He served briefly as Minister of Planning and Higher Education in the previous Taliban administration 20 years ago. Hanif was educated in Wahhabist madrasas in his home province of Badkhshan in Afghanistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa in Pakistan. With limited international exposure and obvious lack of relevant educational background, can Hanif restore a sense of normalcy to the aid-dependent economy? The world is watching. Let's now take a look at the newly appointed acting finance minister, the cleric Mullah Hidayatullah Badri. The ethnic Pashtun was educated mostly in Wahhabist seminaries in Kandahar, in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Badri's educational qualifications are limited to theology. He has been associated with the proscribed terror group for over 30 years and has very limited exposure of finance and administration. In contrast to his predecessor, Ajmal Ahmadi, who holds an MBA from Harvard Business School, a Masters of Economics and Public Administration from the Harvard Kennedy School, and a Bachelor's in Mathematics and Economics from the University of California, the Taliban's choice to run Afghanistan's central bank, the Afghanistan Bank, is Haji Muhammad Idris. Idris is accused by the country's resistance leaders of being a money laundering conduit for the Taliban and Al-Qaeda and being responsible for revenues from the illicit opium trade in the war-torn country. The new Minister of Mines and Petroleum is 57-year-old militiaman Mullah Muhammad Esa Akhund, an ethnic Pashtun from Kandahar. He is on the UN's proscribed list of terrorists and was responsible for running illegal mines under Taliban occupation during the last decade. Finally, the acting Civil Aviation Minister is the 49-year-old Hamidullah Akhundzada. His claim to the ministry comes from the fact that he was head of the Afghanistan's flag carrier Ariana 20 years ago under Taliban. An ethnic Pashtun from Gilzai tribe, his education too has been in Wahhabist seminaries. The Ghani government that was ousted by the Taliban on the 15th of August this year was known to be corrupt, but its administration and key economic departments were run by foreign-educated technocrats. They have now been replaced by terrorist and Taliban's Wahhabist theologist clerics. With Rajesh Sundaram, Bureau Report, Business Today Television.